Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Mr. Merrigan's Moments in History. Today I'm going to be walking my 7th graders through a couple of really key examples of different economic systems, and in this case of black codes, legal hurdles that were put in the place of African Americans during Reconstruction, primarily in the South. And so a couple of the primary sources that we're going to look at come from the Sharecropping organization group. And what I'm going to be asking my students to do is kind of go through these questions, but the primary focus of this video is to help my students kind of be picking out some of the key ideas from this. So I'm going to start with the Black Codes document. And just to kind of give you your sourcing, this comes from a black code from Opelousas, Louisiana, and it was put in place in July 3rd of 1865. And certainly as far as key vocabulary goes, reside is a word that comes up quite a bit, and this means to live in. So I'm glad that the SHIG does this, or Digital Inquiry Group now. So the document is written in the years following the Civil War. Again, we're in that Reconstruction era, and many southern states and cities were passing these black codes, and these were laws that were laid out essentially telling newly freed African Americans what they could do, what they couldn't do, where they were allowed to go, where they were not allowed to go. And this document below, again, was passed on July 3rd of 1865, and is an example of a black code that was, again, from Opelousas in Louisiana. And certainly some of the language in this particular document is reflective of the time. You're going to see they're kind of going to go between two different terms, between freedmen and freed women here at the bottom, along with Negro. And certainly all of these are referring to African Americans at the time. So the black codes were broken down into different sections. These were basically different laws. And so when you see that first section, that's what that's referring to. But section 1, no Negro shall be allowed to come within the limits of the town of Opelousas without special permissions or permission from his employer. So again, you're building that familiarity with the pre-Civil War society. Section 3, no Negro shall be allowed to rent or keep a house within the limits of the town under any circumstances. Section 4. No Negro shall reside within the limits of the town of Opelousas who is not in the regular service of some white person or former owner. Again, referring to the time in which slavery was legal. Now, with the 13th Amendment being passed, slavery is illegal except for as punishment for a crime. Section 5. No public meetings of Negroes shall be allowed within the limits of the town of Opelousas under any circumstances without the permission of the mayor or president of the board of police. This, however, does not prevent the freedmen from attending the usual church services. They do make that distinction. Section 7. No freedman who is not allowed in the who is not in the military service shall be allowed to carry firearms or any kind of weapons within the limits of the town of Opelousas without special permission of his employer in writing and approved by the mayor or the president of the board of police. And then the last example they give is all the foregoing provisions apply to freedmen and freed women. So again, this is from Opelousas, Louisiana. It's an example of a black code written July 3rd, 1865. Now, the second document that I'm going to have my students look at, and this was something I was interested for them to kind of get an example of the hardships that and the inequality that came out of sharecropping. But the source here is from the Grimes Family Papers, and this is number 3357 from 1882, and this was held in the Southern Historical Collection at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And again, this is a sharecropping contract from 1882, and of course has been modified. To everyone applying to rent land, the following conditions must be read and agreed to. For every 30 acres of land rented by sharecroppers, I agree to furnish the mule, team, plow, and farming implements. The sharecroppers are to have half of the cotton, corn, peas, pumpkins, and potatoes they grow in the following conditions. If the following conditions are complied with, but if not, they are to only have 2/5. So we're looking at 40% here. For every mule or horse furnished by me, so again, the landowner in this case, there must be 1,000 good-sized rails, that is logs, hauled, and the fence repaired if I so direct. All sharecroppers must haul rails, aka logs, and work on the fence whenever I may order. The wood must be split and the fence repaired before corn is planted. No cotton must be planted by sharecroppers on their home patches of land. No sharecropper is to work off the plantation when there is any work to be done on the land he has rented, or when his work is needed by me. Every sharecropper must be responsible for all farming gear placed in his hands, and if not returned, must be paid for unless it is worn out by use. Nothing can be sold from theirs, being the sharecropper's crops, until my rent is all paid, and all amounts they owe me are paid in full. I am to gin and pack all the cotton and charge every sharecropper an 1/18 of his part. The cropper to furnish his part of the bagging, ties, and twine. The sale of every sharecropper's part of the cotton to be made by me when and where I choose to sell, and after deducting all they owe me. So you can see there are a ton of fine print in here talking about if the landowner needs to supply any of this, that more will be deducted. You can see that even from the beginning. You go from half to 40% pretty quickly. And then again, there's all these small deductions and labor that are included if you don't meet the original contract. So this is one of the ways in which more and more of the money they would have been getting from the harvest is taken away from them in the process. So I hope this helps my students sort of unpack a little bit of this. Again, I'll be floating around to help you answer these questions. Hopefully you learned something. And again, this was a time period that both created opportunities for African Americans, but also took them away. And these are definitely some examples that took them away. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time at Mr. Merrigan's Moments in History.